Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to 3838 Nightblade Assassin. This build is really popular right now because it has excellent DPS and excellent capabilities when it comes to dealing with disconnects. So with that, I'm going to show you how to spend your points and also which masteries to take, and then how to play this build. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Looking at the soul tree breakdown, you can see we do take the 38 Nightblade and 38 Assassin. I'm not going to go too far into describing each one of the abilities for the sake of brevity. However, I will talk about one controversial point allocation here, which is your poison potency and your advanced flanking. There are some rogues that swear by the advanced flanking up here. I, however, have parsed them both, and I feel like the poison potency is worth more, but that just could be a gear scaling problem, and as I get more gear, the advanced flanking may outdo the poison potency, I'm not sure. So, by all means, test it yourself and do what works best for you. So moving over to the right one more, we take the 0-point Earthstalker, and that's specifically just so you can get the 15-meter teleport. Moving over to the right, we'll talk about the masteries a little bit. The Soul Steel mastery for level 61 lets your Puncture apply Hemophilia to the target. Hemophilia is a 1.5% damage increase, stacks 3 times, for a total of 4.5% damage increase. Moving up to 62, we take Adamant Resolve, reduces the cooldown of Death from the Shadows by 15 seconds. This one's really important because Death from the Shadows' normal cooldown is 30 seconds, and if you look at it over here, it does deal almost 38,000 damage without any damage modifiers running, and you do have quite a few as a Nightblade Assassin. Moving up to 63, we take Boundless Energy because damaging abilities will have a 20% chance to restore 4 energy. This is pretty good because Nightblade Assassin by nature is always starved anyway, just because of a couple abilities that will reduce your energy, like for instance Dusk Strike. Will reduce, every time you get a stack of emptiness, it increases the cost of Dusk Strike by 15%. So during the spam phases of this, it does use a lot of energy, and having that little bit there helps. Moving at 64, we take Repetitive Strikes. This will give you a 6% total increase after 3 stacks from Repetitive Strikes. It also increases the duration of Exposed Weakness by 40 seconds for a total of 60 seconds, making you have to cast it a lot less. Moving up to 65, I would recommend you take Energy Manipulation. The reason that I've taken Planar Conservation here is specifically so that when I show you what the rotation looks like, I don't get too energy starved and I'm not able to do the abilities that I'd like to do. So when you do build this, make sure you do take Energy Manipulation. So that's it for the Soul Tree and the Masteries. Let's go ahead and jump into the macros here real quick. Alright, as you can see here under Nightblade Assassin, we have a Builder macro here. This is going to have Cast Shift Puncture as my first one. This is so that I can hit my Builder key with Shift press down and cast Puncture. So if I hit 1, it'll execute this line first. If I held Shift and then hit 1, it will cast my Puncture for me. It makes it a little easier to manage. Moving down to the second line, this is actually a huge no-no, particularly for raids. You never ever want to put Poison Malice in your macro unless you're using it for, say, expert farming or other trivial types of instances. Now if you're in a raid, the first thing you're going to want to do if you plan on using this spec is go ahead and put 2 slashes in front of that line or delete the line altogether. It's totally up to you. I do put Poison Malice in my macro when I am using this for trivial things like experts though, just because it's not important to manage it because there's not generally going to be support classes in there that you need to line up your cooldowns with. But like I said, in a raid, you definitely want to line up your Poison Malice cooldown, which by the way increases your poison buff damage by 125% for 15 seconds. You definitely want to line this up with Flaring Power and Orchestra. So make sure that you are doing that, please, if you would. Moving on down, we got Dusk to Dawn, Death from the Shadows. These are your 2 big cooldowns. Right here, Death from the Shadows deals the 37k like we talked about. From Dusk to Dawn or Dusk to Dawn does 30,000 damage over 4 seconds, but it also increases your finisher damage by 20% for 60 seconds. So you want to make sure you're casting this before you use finishers. This pretty much has 100% uptime, so after that you can pretty much just pop it on cooldown. Moving down, we have Backstab and Savage Strike followed by Twilight Force. These 2 right here are going to be from your Assassin tree, and they're just builders, melee builders. Twilight Force is going to be your ranged builder. Just in case you do get out of melee range, you do have 20-meter range on Twilight Force. And of course, cast itself, Energy Manipulation, is to make sure that your Energy Manipulation buff is always cast and always running when it can be. Moving on down, we have the finisher macro. Blazing Strike is going to be your melee finisher, and Flame Thrust is going to be your ranged 20-meter finisher. So again, if you do get out of melee range, you're still able to cast abilities while you're waiting to get back into melee range. Again, cast itself, Energy Manipulation, to make sure that it's always up. Moving on down, we have a Dusk Strike macro. I talked about Dusk Strike a little bit briefly. This one is mostly for, you're going to be weaving this in with your regular rotation. I'll talk more about it in the rotation section. But Dusk Strike is your melee builder, and Twilight Force is your ranged builder. And these are also going to be used a lot when the enemy is below 30% because they both deal 30% more damage, sub 30% on the enemy. Moving on down, we have an AoE macro. The AoE in this spec isn't very good, however it's there just in case you need to use it. We have a Slip Away macro. Slip Away will take you completely out of combat, allowing you to cast Dark Malady from stealth because it does put you in stealth, giving you that 8-second 20% damage increase and also the Cloaking Dagger. So this one's actually pretty good too for nice little bursts in the front there. We'll talk more about this in the single target section. Moving up, I have a Fiery Spike focus here. What this is used for is target swapping. If you've been on a target for a while and you have 5 stacks of Fiery Spike on it and you have to swap off, it's nice if you don't have to build those 5 stacks up again when you swap back. One fight that comes to mind is the Drekanoth of Fate, number 3 boss in Ren of Fate. You have to swap off of Drekanoth to kill the world conducers, I think they're called. If you swap off of that and you're fighting the world conducer, you need to make sure that if your Fiery Spike is about to fall off, you can just tap this macro once as long as your Drekanoth is focused, and it will refresh the stacks for you. And you can use that on any boss that you have to target swap on. Other than that, though, I do have a Nightblade Assassin K-Alert set here that just moves my K-Alert set to 2. And I do also borrow the preload from the Assassin. So if you want to, you can make the same macro twice, but I just steal it from Assassin because that's where it is in my macro setup. But that's it for macros. Let's go ahead and talk about what's on the buffs and the bar, or what's on the bar and the buffs rather. So the 2 buffs that you have are Virulent Poison, Lethal Poison. Lethal Poison is pretty important because it makes whatever target you're on have a 5% increased chance to crit on him. So it's a good raid buff there, especially because it applies passively. These 2 buffs right here are going to be a large chunk of your damage, so make sure you do not forget them when you're buffing up. Moving to the right, we have an Energy Manipulation. You don't ever really have to cast that because it is in your macros, except for in the beginning of the fight, which it should be in your pre-pull macro from Stealth. We do have, of course, the Nightblade Assassin K-Alert here, and then, of course, Planar Conservation. I never ever take this. The only reason, again, I'm taking this now is to show you some of the potential of Nightblade Assassin, or at least the best that I can on a dummy. Moving on down, we have the Slip Away macro here. We'll talk more about that in the single target section. We have the 2 major cooldowns here. I don't press them from here, but I do have them here so that I can monitor their cooldowns a little easier. On my Q keybind, I have Stealth. On my E keybind, I have Exposed Weakness so that I can refresh it easily. On my R keybind, I have Fiery Spike. Moving down the line, we have the Spam macro here. We have the Finisher macro here. We have Dusk Strike here. The Dusk Strike macro, rather. We have Ebon Fury here, which stops your Dusk Strike and Twilight Force from costing energy. Talk more about this later. I do have Puncture on my 5 key, however, I do also have it as a shift modifier on my 1 key. You can cast it from both. You can actually remove that off your bar if you like. It's up to you, however you want to do it. If you want to put it on the bar and not use the shift modifier, you can put it on your 5 key or wherever you like. But I have it in both places. I need to actually probably pull it off the bar one of these times. But moving on over, 6 is the AoE macro. Pretty terrible, but it's there. 7 is going to be the teleport you get from Wriststalker, and 8 is going to be your Fiery Spike focus. Now, if you've watched my guides before, you do know that my 0 key is mapped to my middle click, and that way I can cast Poison Malice in a raid when it lines up nice with Flaring Power and Orchestra. As I said, I only have Poison Malice in a macro when I'm doing something trivial like an Expert or something similar. And of course, my negative key is going to be the Break Free. So that's it for the bars. Let's go ahead and talk about the K-Alerts really quick, and then we'll get into the rotation. So looking at the K-Alert system here, you can see I track quite a few things here. I'll show you the layout, how mine's set up. So below 30%, like I said before, you deal 30% more damage with your Dusk Strike and your Twilight Force. So that's where this number 3 macro here really comes in. Moving over to the left here, we have the Emptiness stacks here, which is going to be every time you hit your Dusk Strike, it's going to spam a stack or give you a stack of Emptiness, increasing the damage of Dusk Strike by 10% and also its cost by 15%. So not very efficient, but really good to use during Versa Vitality when you have a Bard casting the energy buff, the energy cooldown, or also when you have Ebon Fury running. Over to the right here, Fiery Spike. You want to try and get 5 stacks of this as fast as you can, and then it'll be maintained by your finisher. Every time you cast a finisher, it'll refresh for you. Over to the left here we have the Ebb and Fury. This is just going to be a 10-second buff. 10-second buff that you are going to want to spam Dusk Strike during. I'll explain more about that in the rotation section. Over to the left here, these are going to be the three ones that you really want to worry about. The Exposed Weakness, the 6% damage increase lasts for 60 seconds with our Mastery. You want to make sure you keep that up 100%. I usually refresh it about 0 to 3 seconds or so because it is off global cooldown, so you can just tap it really quick to refresh it. Moving on the left, this is Night Rage. It's a 20% finisher increase that is cast by your Dusk to Dawn. Moving on to the left, we have Puncture. Puncture is your dot, your damage over time ability here. Again, it is on your Shift 1 and also on your 5 here. If you want to take the Shift macro out, you can. If you want to take the 5 out, you can. It's all personal preference. This one right here is important because every time you cast it, it increases your damage by 1.5%. That debuff lasts for 15 seconds, and your Puncture lasts for 10 seconds. So doing some simple math here, you need to make sure that when your Puncture falls off, you have 5 seconds to refresh Puncture. Otherwise, you're going to lose that buff and have to start over at 0 stacks. So you need to make sure that you're casting it within 5 seconds of it falling off. And of course, down below you have the hard hitters here. This is Dark Malady, which lasts for 8 seconds, and this is Cloak and Dagger, which lasts for 15 seconds. So when you first start off the fight during your opener, you're going to have a 35% damage increase for 8 seconds, and then your Dark Malady is going to fall off, at which point you're going to have an additional 7 seconds of Cloak and Dagger left to finish off any of your extra cooldowns or try and get as many abilities out as you can. Pretty good stuff there. So that's it for the K-alerts. Now I guess we'll go ahead and talk about the rotation. Nightblade Assassin has quite the learning curve just because there's so many debuffs and buffs that you have to keep track of, and also because it uses more of a priority system than a rotation. The only part you're going to use a rotation for is going to be in the opener. After that, it's going to go into a Dusk Strike block, and you're going to need to manage your energy and kind of feel out. Every situation may be a little bit different, so you're going to need to kind of feel out when to use specific abilities and how far to starve yourself, that kind of thing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it, and I'll show you how to do that. So first thing you're going to do is move along to the back side of the enemy. You're going to stealth up, and you're going to preload him with your Exposed Weakness macro, which should have Exposed Weakness and Energy Manipulation in it. We do not have Energy Manipulation active right now, again, just because we do have Planar Conservation to try and show you a little bit more of what that Dusk Strike management would look like. So we're on the back side of this guy right now. He is debuffed. First thing we're going to do is Dark Malady, followed by a Fiery Spike, followed by a Dusk to Dawn. After that, we'll have 5 combo points, and we'll need to use a finisher, so we'll use a finisher, and then we'll move right back into it and do a Shift 1, which will cast our Puncture, and then we'll do a Death from the Shadows, followed by a Fiery Spike, which will give us 5 points again, and then we'll be able to use a finisher again. After that, we're going to be working on our Dusk Strike block. So let's go ahead and see what all that stuff looks like. So we're on the boss now, on this butt again. We'll go ahead and debuff him just to make sure we got a fresh 60-second Exposed Weakness here. We'll go Dark Malady, followed by Fiery Spike, Dusk to Dawn, Finisher. Puncture, Death from the Shadows, Fiery Spike, Finisher. Now we're going to spam our Dusk Strike until we get low energy. Refreshing our Puncture as needed. Keep spamming your Dusk Strike till you get low. We're getting pretty low now, so we're spam it one more time. Now we're just going to use our Ebb and Fury. So here we go, we're spamming it. We need to refresh Puncture again. We're still spamming our Dusk Strike. We're at 5 stacks, but it's not costing us any energy currently, so it's a great builder. So now it is costing us energy, but we're going to keep spamming it to the finisher. Refresh that. Use our hard hitter and cooldowns. Finisher. So I just refreshed Dusk Strike there. Realistically, I probably should have let it fall off, but it is kind of hard to gauge it sometimes, especially if you're used to raiding with the spec. I just refreshed it again. I'm going to let it fall off this time just to kind of show you what it would kind of look like there. We got Puncture coming back off. We want to make sure we get that Exposed Weakness back up. So now it's off. We're going to go ahead and use it some more. Get some more of those stacks up. We're going to keep on spamming here. Get our big cooldowns off. Fire it off. Make sure we get that Puncture down so we're not missing out on any of the debuffs. Keep going. So you can see our Ebb and Fury is about to come off. So let's keep. Okay, we'll go ahead and pop that since we're low. Refresh the Puncture. Fire our 2 hard hitters off there. And we're going to keep going Dusk Strike because we have Ebb and Fury going. You can see that we're up in the 49 still. Usually, if I wasn't narrating, this would probably look more like a 51 or a 52. That's usually what I do on a dummy anyway, without the 2 other abilities we talked about previously. But you can see it's still pulling pretty good numbers. So over a minute 45, we were just about flat 50 or so there. So not too bad, especially for the gear that this guy has currently. But like I said before, we can't do our slip away and we can't do our sub 30, so expect a DPS increase from both of those two abilities as well. Now, where to fit in the slip away? You're going to definitely want to make sure that your cloak and dagger has fallen all the way off before you use this again. So if you time it right, you can use your Dark Malady and such, and you can hit your Death of the Shadows and your Dusk to Dawn right after you've done that, of course. And then if you do your slip away right after your Cloak of Death, or Cloak of Shadows, excuse me, falls off, do it again, you'll have another 15-second window there where you can fit in your Death from the Shadows and Dusk to Dawn again to get the benefit from that. So you just want to make sure that you use the slip away followed by another Dark Malady right afterwards. So I can't, like I said before, I can't really show you that in this video just because if I did show you that, it would reset the combat and you wouldn't be able to see an accurate representation of DPS. So that's it, guys. As I said, it pulls about 50k on a dummy without using a couple abilities. If you have any questions, as always, send me in-game email or a tell at klepto@deepwood or callus@deepwood. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.